How he did last week at Q, sort of like here. He tells the rabbis in town if if there's young people who sort of like unattached, so
Here's my tripod.
You want me to sit?
You're my tripod.
The tripod? You want to sit here?
No, it's too hot here.
What?
It's too hot. Something happening?
Is it happening?
The camera is
Is it recording? Oh, there you go.
But I think we should. It doesn't see. Oh, there.
There you go. Oh yeah, he's the IT par excellence.
Make sure that when I miss a share, I get to view the recording.
He got Steve Jobs, right?
Explains Apple.
So be careful what you say.
That's where he recorded. You were. You were high tech before high tech.
Yeah. They want me to go there.
This is nice to sit right here. Who's sitting here?
Ernie, you want me to do it from here?
No, I want you to sit. Mario, you and Anna sit right here.
No, I'm not. Let's sit down.
Okay?
It's an hour video.
Yeah.
Who's on the video?
Mind blowing.
Who's on the video?
Mario quiere que te sientes acá.
Oh, okay. Se ve porque yo no veo lo que está pasando.
Sí, se ve. Se ve, se ve de Verne para
Is that a good place? This is what he does for everybody, every day, many times a day. Ernie, can you talk about how?
Thank you.
Yeah, I will.
Maybe we need.
My father had a balance, so he did online. So he said he went to the balance.
And it's very unusual.
What? Yeah.
Couple of books. This goes up.
He has no sport in here.
He does, ¿no?
It's huge.
Welcome, everybody. Susie and I would like to extend our welcome, first of all, to Morda Asser by Einhorn.
Right?
That's better, yeah.
Rabbi Seligman is also going to be here. There's a lot of young Israel Hancock Park. This is a wonderful combination of the two shuls. In fact, tomorrow night, some of you have seen the flyer from Rabbi Mordechai Kuber. Those of you from Los Angeles, Mark Kuber was a high school classmate of mine in Rambam 50 years ago. He's now a major rav. He's wrote a 3-volume on the international dateline. And he's given in the 3 shuls in Israel, the Hancock Park and Kilat Yavna and Shar Tefillah are doing joint Zoom tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. So our daf yomi will be at 7:30, and then this international dateline share with Mark Kuber. Remember the Kuber family, Judy? He was on the other side of the living on Pico. They went to high school. But Mark Kuber was 2 years younger than me. He skipped into my class in 11th grade. Remember we did chemical. We did Paul Weber taught us honors chemistry. He won. So Rambam was a school 100 kids. We competed against Beverly High and Fairfax. Like these were high schools with 2,000-3,000 kids. And Rambam won 3 years. The year before me, my year, and the year after. So much so that when I went to UCLA, freshman chemistry, Kenneth Kubler, who's the professor, he saw my yarmulke and goes, "Oh, you're one of those Rambam kids." Seriously. But Mark Kuber won. He was number 1. Or I was like 16 or something. But he was number 1 in the whole Southern California. So he became a Rav, and he lives in Yerushalayim. That's more cool.
I can say I have those 3 volumes. It is amazing. I've read it. I read like volume 1 3 times. Still don't understand.
I have to make sure that I email you the Zoom. Oh, it's our regular Zoom tomorrow. The regular ID thing.
Same time, regular time?
Same time at 8 o'clock. No, but our daf would be at 7. So there's a few people. So first of all, one of our guests, Rabbi Publisher, is still on his way from the airport. I don't know exactly when he's going to arrive. I already printed out on the PDFs all the certificates. There's a very significant event that we're commemorating today, but he's bringing the certificates with him that are from Israel, signed by all the Rabbanim. I have certificates. If he doesn't make it here by 9 o'clock, 9:15, whenever we're done,
He's on the way.
he's on his way. Okay. So
The computer, take
the computer, but I want to.
I want to see you.
Okay, let's put this up. So 3 years ago, it was I think January, February. We were in shul. We already started the new cycle of the Daf Yomi. And I believe it was either Jerry Einhorn or Bernie Monduler who had gotten something in the mail, a promotional
I'm still trying to get it. Wait, with the key T. I want to still.
So it was a smaller volume. No. What happened to the thing? Where did the email go? I had it set up there. I didn't click to get rid of it.
Está bien, está bien.
Okay, let's hold it there. So I had gotten the same thing. It was much smaller, thinner version. And World Mizrahi has a new CEO. His name is Rav Doron Perez. We've had him at Chartsville. He's a very dynamic South African. We've had him at Kilat Yavna. He's a very dynamic person who's in South Africa. I think the principal of the Yeshiva College that the brothers founded many years ago. And he's really injected tremendous koach into the Mizrahi movement. Rakav is probably
Helping him navigate.
The main issue is the new emphasis on Torah. For example, those of us who grew up in Los Angeles, there's a lot of old Angelinos here. So for example, Beth Jacob and that side of town, with Rabbi Dolgin and Rabbi Maurice Lamb, there was tremendous Zionism, Israeli bonds, Bnei Akiva, Camp Moshava, but less emphasis on Torah. I remember moving into this community in 1982. Of course, Lakewood Kola was here. Rabbi Krauss was the Mordas for Young Israel. It was a very strong emphasis on Torah. I thought it'd be different emphasis from different sides of town. I would say the Mizrahi movement went through the same thing. And Rav Doron Perez's main focus is to begin to inject a significant amount of Torah learning within the Mizrahi movement. One of their projects was this Tzurba Rabbana. So there was a Ram in Kerbi Avna for many years, Rabbi Gazi. In fact, Rabbi Segelman told me that he was in Kerbi Avna at the same time as Rabbi Gazi. They were friends, they knew each other, etc. We're going to hear a minute from Rabbi Gazi. Rabbi Gazi created this concept of Tzurba Rabbana. Of course, everyone knows about Daf Yomi. Meir Shapira, 1920. About that time, and since then the world learns the same Daf every day. But in some of my research in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, what did people learn when they lived in Tomashov or Human? These were Balabatim, but they were devoted to Torah learning. What did they learn? It was all Daf Yomi. So those of you who have a Tillim, you see that the Tillim is divided in a way where you could finish it in a month, or there's a certain, if you do so many Tillims per day, you get you finish it in a month or whatever. In 1450, Rav Yosef Karo, who lived in Tzfat, finally compiled the Shulchan Aruch. Of course, there was an earlier codifier, the Rambam, in the year 1200 in Cordova, who had taken the various volumes of the Talmud and sorts out of there the different subject matters halacha, whether it was about Pesach, or whether it was about Korbanos, or about Shabbos. But the Rambam didn't give all the details, the sources where he got the halachas from. But the Yad Chazaka became one of the first codes of halacha. Now, the Rif and the Rosh were also Sephardic Rabbanim who wrote codes. But the son of the Rosh, Rav Yaakov Balaturim, created 4 halakim, 4 sections of Shulchan Aruch. In his time, it was called the Torah. Orach Chaim, laws of daily life. Yoreh Deah is Isser V'Heter, prohibition. This is kosher, this is not kosher. This woman is a nida, and this is what you're prohibited, and what anything that's permitted or not permitted. Then, of course, Choshen Mishpah. Our Mordasra just got Yod and Yod after 10 years to become a dayan. You have to learn the laws of mominus, money. You strike him, therefore you owe him money because you caused him pain, or I stole from him. And then finally, there's Even HaEzer, which is like Gittin and Kiddushin, how do you get married, what are the laws? Those 4 halakim was laid down by the Torah. Eventually, Rav Yosef Karo, 1450, created the Shulchan Aruch. He used the same divisions that the Torah did. But what was added there, Rav Moshe Isherlish lived in Krakow, about 1520, 1540. The Yosef Karo was a Sephardi. So, but the Ramah brought all the various halachas from, for example, the Maravi Rottenberg was from Germany, or the Mahariel, which was from Germany. And the Ramah always says, in our lands, in Ashkenaz. So now we had a book of law for both Sephardim and Ashkenazim, and basically the Shulchan Aruch has been the source of the halacha that we religious Jews live. Now, the Mishnah Brura, the Chofetz Chaim, who died in 1933, took Orach Chaim and went into depth. So there's 6 volumes of Mishnah Brura. We're very familiar with those laws of Shabbos, laws of Yom Tov, laws of Netilas Yadayim, and Tefillin and tzitzis, daily life halachas. However, what a lot of the general Balabatim are not familiar with are, for example, Yoreh Deah. And this, we just completed this group over the last 3 years, learning once a week. First, we did it in my home Tuesday nights in person, but once COVID came, we started by Zoom, and we finished these 7 volumes. Okay, and we read literally every word, as though the Balabatim were in the Shir. No, we read every Tshuva and Hidden. And the Tzurba Rabbanan goes through the Shulchan Aruch in a very organized fashion. It starts from the Chumash, it goes to the Gemara, then it'll go through the Rishonim, the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, and then it'll go to the Achronim. For example, Rav Moshe Feinstein, it was Moshe, Rav Asher Weiss, Rav Hershel Schachter, or you will see Rav Ovadia Yosef. And learning through those truths are not that easy. It's complicated, and therefore, as a group, we do it together. And those people who eventually sit and get rabbinic ordination, like we just had a Chag HaSmicha at Yeshiva University, it was an advertisement, 4 LA young men just got smicha from Yeshiva University. Their study is in Yoreh Deah, but it's usually basar b'chalav, milk and meat, tarugas, mixtures, and malicha. Now they've added it much more. You have to learn Avelis, there's a chasnida. Of course, YU, the smicha is much more complicated. You have to learn homiletics, how to speak, psychology. They want you to have a master's. It's not, but for example, Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg, who just passed away the last year or so, was known as a Rav that you could go visit him in Yerushalayim. I once saw that bechina. My smicha journey was with Yeshiva Pirchei Shoshanim 5 years ago. But Eli Reisman, it's 80 questions, all on Yoreh Deah. He would give it to you, and you would have to go through it, and you would give it back to him, and he would give the person speaking. He would sit with him and find out who this person is, etc., etc. But that's only a small section of Yoreh Deah. What we finished with the 7 volumes of Yoreh Deah, we finished all of Yoreh Deah. The last I would say 8-9 months, we learned Hilchos Nida in incredible depth, as everyone can attest to. even though it's not that Nogea to us, based on our stage in life at this time, but for example, for our kids and maybe our grandkids, etc., I think it was a very interesting thing. But all the Hilchas Talmud Torah, Hilchas Stoka, Hilchas Mila, Hilchas Chukas Hagoyim and Darchei Amor, all the various subject matters that came in your Deah was tackled by this group. So to be able to finish this, and I think it's important that they've come from Israel, the Mizrahi leadership, to recognize that this is a very special group. So I said, Rav El-Ghazi in Israel has established the Tzurba Rabbanon, and tens of thousands, if not more, of Israelis learned this, but it was done in Hebrew. So 3 years ago, the Torah Umanigud, Eretz Chemda with Rav Carmel, which is one of the major kolim in the Mizrahi world, plus the Mizrahi, sponsored an English translation of the Tzurba. So this Tzurba has Hebrew on one side and English on the other side. And this is the material that we started learning as a group for a few years. There's not that many big chaburas in North America. Ours is one of the largest chaburas that meet on a regular basis. But for example, at Bnei Yeshurun in Tina, there is a group that learns Tzurba. In Toronto, Rabbi Karupkin told me that there's a group that learns Tzurba. And it's spreading, Susie's brother, Michael Lax, has just like the Schottenstein family sponsors the Schottenstein Talmud, the Tzurba Rabbanon is now sponsored by the Lax family in honor of Jonathan and Ethan Lax, as Susie's nephews who were nifter, unfortunately, a few years ago. So this has really been pushed forward by this project. There's a whole staff that's now trying to educate rabbinic leaders. Rabbi Rakov can tell us, because he's going to address this a little bit as well, about them. I heard that they went to 50 different shuls and schools in the last 4 or 5 days. They're all interested in learning Tzurba, and we'll hear more a little bit about it from them. So we have, fortunately, our Amor Asher here, Rabbi Einhorn, and I wanted him to be able to give us different chizuk, the Balmatim, who they're the ones who started this whole project. It came from them. They said, Ernie, would you be willing to teach this? Is this something that we could learn? How do we do it? Bernie, Jerry, Saul Bernstein, and the group at Yavna, and then of course it grew as people heard about it, and a lot of the Daf Yomi people who come join, and we have people from the Valley, and Baruch Hashem, it's gotten bigger and bigger. So, no further ado, Rabbi Einhorn.
Shkoach. Thank you, Dr. Eckstein. Shkoach. Susie, I think that just to acknowledge that Dr. Ernie and Susie act as sort of the glue, pulling everyone together to continue to learn Torah and to push ourselves into new territory. In this area of Tzurba Rabbanon, I got excited when you said that it's a Syum on your Deah, and I love your Deah. I love your Deah. I specifically, those who know my shir know I like taking far-flung areas that you weren't expecting to learn, because I really feel like Hashem is talking to us from every section of the Torah. And you don't need to point to the obvious stuff to find it. You can go to some more out there type topics and find HaKadosh Baruch Hu there waiting for you. So I thought just to share something on your Deah tonight, and a topic I don't think we were expecting to learn tonight, and that is exciting Hilchas Shchita. Yeah, Hilchas Shchita. You talked about learning Nida is barely Nogea because of demographic. Hilchas Shchita is certainly not Nogea. Anybody here at this table, no one's shechting anymore. Maybe you once had a great-grandparent in the Altaheim who was the shochet, but no one here is shechting anything. So I think it's a perfect place to start, because you definitely, I think you haven't, I don't know how much Tzurba focused on Hilchas Shchita. Listen, even in the YU Smicha, they cut out Hilchas Malicha. They want you just to run through it so you can say you did it, but the salting stuff, no one's salting anything anymore. So in terms of our circles. Okay, so fine. So I want to share with you the following insight in Hilchas Shchita to show you how beautiful Torah is. And once you start learning the Shulchan Aruch, there's no end. I mean, there's literally no end. You can go down any line is a rabbit hole. That it must take a lot of self-control to stay within the boundaries of the page. Because once you go down, I mean, from a Schechter, of Usher Weiss, pick any one line, you can go into weeks and weeks of subject material. So one halacha here in the beginning of Hilchas Shchita talks about whether or not a katan could do the shchita. Can a minor shecht or not? Right? Would a minor be able to shecht? So yeah. So good. So the Shulchan Aruch says, "Ima katan yodea leimen yadav." if the cotton is an expert in shchita, the miner, if others stand on top of them, he could do it even initially. And you could eat from his shchita. But if he's shechting privately, his shchita is psula. Even though he knows hilcha shchita, the debate in the Gemara when it says he's an expert, does it mean he's an expert in how to hold a knife, or he's an expert in the laws, or maybe both? So the Ramah says, even if he knows, he tested him, he passed from Zamlach over, he knows it cold. If it was done privately than anybody watching, so it's not going to be good. So says the Shach on the side. See a little commentary you have running down the side here? There's the Shach, there's the Taz, there's even smaller font. The Pischei Tshuva is a lot of fun if you're bored one night. The Pischei Tshuva is a great, forget the game night, right? Remember Jeopardy night at our house? Remember Jeopardy we used to play? Forget it, we got Shach night now. Yeah. Pischei Tshuvas are great. Pischei Tshuvas are wonderful.
That's the one we always say. It's like the Mishnah Brura, but on the other day, more
100%.
modern person.
A good collection of sources. So the Shach on the side over here says, okay, so if he knows how to hold his hand, it's good, right? Now, the reason why we don't trust his shchita privately, why it's no good, he quotes the reason is Kasu Atam Bira'ah and the Marshal, Mishum De'ein Nemonas L'Katan, because we don't believe the miner. If he did it privately, we don't know what he did. He doesn't have believability yet. Ein Nemonas L'Katan. Even though when someone's a minor, they know how to lie less than when someone's older. They've learned the fine art. But the Chazal have said that a cotton, it doesn't have the status of Nemonis yet. Then he quotes the Lavush. The Lavush says the reason is because, since he hasn't arrived at the Chovas Shchita Min Torah, Ein Shchita so Shchita. His Shchita isn't the Shchita. So two reasons the Shach quotes why you do not use the Shchita of a cotton. Why? Number one, he doesn't have Nemonis yet. Two, the Lavush says because he's not bar Shchita. He doesn't have the responsibility yet in his life. Since he is someone who's not responsible in Shchita yet, he's not able to take care of it. Says the Shach, I don't like this answer. Vadai, he goes, no. He got that from the fact that a non-Jew isn't commanded in Shchita, so therefore you can't use the Shchita of a non-Jew. However, but a Katan, of course he has to have Shchita. He's not allowed to eat without Shchita. And also, we find sometimes that a Shchita is good. Why? As Ernie said, Omen al Gaba, there's someone standing by him, he's an expert, so on and so forth. So the Shach says he doesn't accept. So to review, the Katan doing Shchita, if he does it privately, we don't accept it, but Shach says it's just a technical reason. It's a technical problem, not an intrinsic problem. Technically, we don't believe him, but hypothetically, were we to know that he knows what he's doing and someone was watching him, we would be able to accept his Shchita. The famous challenge on this is the Gemara in Gittin. The Gemara in Gittin says that a cotton, along with others, is not eligible to write a Sefer Torah. Why? Why can't the cotton write a Sefer Torah? No, why is it no good? Because he's not a bar. Those who are not involved in Shira and tying tefillin yet, or not a bar ksiva, he's not of age where he has the responsibility of putting on tefillin or anything. And since he's not of age where there is responsibility, therefore he cannot take care of the mitzvah of writing the Sefer Torah. So ask the Nod de Yehuda that contradicts this idea. We accept the cotton, technically speaking, we accept the cotton even though he's not a bar shchita. He doesn't have an obligation of shchita right now. We accept it. Yet how come we don't say since he's not a bar shchita, just like we said by writing a Sefer Torah? You're the contradict, the stira. Maseches Chulin, the Maseches Gittin, the way the Shach understands it, certainly you have yourself a contradiction. It's a famous kasha of the Nod de Yehuda. So I'll give you the answer of the Nod de Yehuda. The Nod de Yehuda says, no, he is involved in the mitzvah of shchita. He does have a connection to it. How? Because you can't feed him something that wasn't shechted. It's also for a parent to give a child non-shechted meat. You can't do it. You're not, since he has or she has a responsibility towards the idea of shchita, even though they don't have to shech themselves, that already links them towards it. While Sefer Torah, they don't have to write one. They don't have to put on tefillin. They don't have any of that stuff yet. There's no connection yet to the obligation of the mitzvah. So shchita, even though their obligation comes in a roundabout way, they still have a shaykhis to it. That's the answer of the Nod de Yehuda. Rav Soloveitchik gave a different answer. Rav Soloveitchik made the following distinction. It's also Rav Elchanan Wasserman, maybe even the Prima Gaden of the Psicha Kolelis, says the following. He says, even though he might not have the mitzvah yet, but his Maisa Avera is still considered a Maisa Avera. What that means is, even though we don't punish a minor for doing a sin, however, there's still something significant that was achieved. Something actually happened. They did something. You don't say that, it's a proof for this, famous proof for this. The Rambam writes by a Shivcha Charufa. Shivcha Charufas were two people owned a maidservant. One of them freed it. The other one didn't. Shivcha Charufa. So in that case where a couple is with a Shivcha Charufa, he brings a korban when he's older. So everyone asks, how can he bring a korban when he's older? He doesn't have any ownership for when he's young. So Rav Soloveitchik said, you see from that Rambam, he's quoting his grandfather Chaim, you see from the Rambam, there actually is a status to his Avera. There is a status to his Avera. And even the Ravid who disagrees with that Rambam, says the Rambam's wrong, he only disagrees because he says you can't punish the kid yet. But not that he doesn't believe a kid has a status of a Maisa Avera. I'll give you one more final answer this week close. The last answer comes from Chaim Ozer. Chaim Ozer was one of the greatest poskim in Jewish history. He passed away in the Holocaust, right at the beginning of the Holocaust. And, they say about him that he used to write two chuvas at the same time with different hands. I always say, no one knows if that's true or not, but they don't tell that story about us over here, right? He was writing both hands. Reb Chaim Ozer said the following. He said there's a fundamental difference between writing tefillin, writing Sifrei Torah, and all of that. You see, when a katan turns bar mitzvah, the obligation for him to have meat that's been shechted properly, it's the same obligation. He just now is an adult. He's a new person. But the obligation is the same. Nothing changed. But the status of Talmud Torah, the status of writing Torah, of writing tefillin, status of learning Torah, that's new every single day. And right now, the minor does not have that obligation. And therefore, he's not involved in it in any way whatsoever. Even though we have chinuch and we teach them, it's not the same mitzvah. That mitzvah is going to transform later on. And what a beautiful explanation to what the mitzvah Talmud Torah is all about. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said, how come Torah is the only mitzvah that keeps changing, right? The Gemara told you how many hours you're supposed to learn per day of Torah, yet nobody follows it. 1/3 this, 1/3 that. No one ever had Tzurba Rabbanan. Who came along and made a new minhag here to learn now from a Tzurba Rabbanan? We have Mishnah Brurers. We have older Sfar, Chaye Adam. Who came along? Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says that's the mitzvah. Torah is unique. Shatnez doesn't change in every generation. Shatnez is always Shatnez. Torah always changes. Why? Because it's always about the result. And it's new every single day. And to be able to pull everyone together to be able to learn this Tzurba Rabbanan, to learn Torah Eretz Yisrael, where the Gemara tells us, Avira de'ara machkim, that the air of Eretz Yisrael makes us smarter. To be able to bring that here. Rav Kook says what kept him alive outside of Eretz Yisrael was his dreaming and longing to be in Eretz Yisrael. When we learn the Torah's Eretz Yisrael that comes from the Mizrahi, they're able to put out, it's able to connect us in such a deep way that it's not the same Torah. Qualitatively and quantitatively, it's a totally different Torah. So everyone here should continue, and all of us, myself and everyone, should be able to continue and grow wherever Tzurba Rabbanan goes, and whatever alleyway, whatever avenue, all these sugyas take us down. We should be able to enjoy them. We should be able to share them with those around us, and be able to continue growing in Torah and Chuppah and Maisim Tovim. May have Esrim Shana.
By the way, we have finished your Deah maybe a month ago, so we've started Orach Chaim already. So we're going to have this Medayim. We're now starting Hilchos Tzitzis. So the Tzurba will, Orach Chaim, I don't know whether it'll take 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah.
But the idea is to finish Dalet Chalkei Shulchan Aruch. I think right now they're up to 10 lines. At the end, it will be 25. Again, thank you, Rabbi Einhorn. The other Mordasher that's here, of course, is Rabbi Segelman, new to our community, but already well ensconced. We've already drawn from the wells of his Torah, and many of the Balabatim here as well. He told me that he himself knows Rav Ghazi. We have some words of Rav Ghazi. After Rabbi Segelman will speak them, he's going to do it in Hebrew, but it's a divrei bracha for Rav Ghazi to this group specifically. But I thought we heard from Rabbi Segelman first in terms of divrei chizuk to this group who's been learning the last 3 years and completed this Sugya Yordeh.
Absolutely incredible. Thank you, Ernie and Susie, and mazel tov to all of the Simon and all the participants of this amazing group. I was asked to give divrei bracha, divrei chizuk, this is such a chizuk. This is such a bracha, such a chizuk. Just sitting here, the men and the women. They figure it used to be that the women were here because they wanted to support their husbands. They're here because the women, the husbands go out to learn. But now when everything goes on Zoom, I hear from my shiurim that the women are better listeners than the men. The men are sitting in the computer and they're checking their emails. The women are the ones who are actually listening. And I get the questions from the women.
Making
and not
dinner.
from the men. I said, this was a shiur for men. What are you doing asking me a question? Well, it's on Zoom. It's on Zoom, and my husband wasn't listening. I was listening, so I have a question. So really, it's not just a simcha for the men who were quote unquote in the shiur, but certainly the women were very much a part in so many different ways. I think the limud specifically, as Ernie mentioned, your Deah limud, smicha limud, is a very important limud, and I think especially in this week's parsha, very apropos. We find that the Avos frequented Batei Medrash. We find the Beis Medrash of Shem, the Beis Medrash of Ever. That was where people went to learn. Was it one Beis Medrash? Was it two Batei Medrash? So the Mefarshim seem to tell us that it was actually two different Batei Medrash. There was the Beis Medrash of Shem, and there was the Beis Medrash of Ever. And sometimes we find individuals seeking out the Beis Medrash of Shem, and sometimes people go to the Beis Medrash of Ever. For instance, in last week's parasha, Rivka was confused. She had this pregnancy. She didn't understand what the meaning was. When she walked by a Beis Medrash, she would feel kicking in one direction, and then when she would pass the Beis Medrash, she didn't understand what was going on with this pregnancy. She needed to understand the deeper meaning behind it. So, Batelech Lidrosh Es Hashem, the Medrash tells us, where did she go? The Beis Medrash of Shem. In the beginning of this week's parasha, we find Yaakov was on the run. Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech Charana. We know that he was sent. He was sent away to Laban's house. Rivka had sent him, but he took a slight detour. The detour was that of the Beis Medrash of Ever. It wasn't a small stopover. He was there for 14 years.
Oh, wow.
He was there for 14 years. And the Gemara and Megillah says, oh, wow, his mother had told him to go. And he didn't just, go to school and stop on the candy store to the way to school. 14 years he neglected the words of his mother. And the Gemara and Megillah and David Zion says, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It wasn't the problem. He wasn't punished for not listening, for disobeying his mother Rivka. It was a good thing. But it's interesting. Yaakov then went to the Beis Medrash of Ever. Rivka, his mother, studied and sought out Eitzah from the Beis Medrash of Shem. Why did Rivka go to the Beis Medrash of Shem and Yaakov went to the Beis Medrash of Ever? Perhaps the idea is that the two Batei Medrash represent two different types of Limud HaTorah. When we have Limud HaTorah, when we think about Limud HaTorah in general, there's more of the philosophical, the hashkafic, machshava type of learning. And then there's more of the practical, halacha l'maisa, tachlis, lasuke shmaitza, leave it to help us to learn the sugya, learn the Gemara, to come out with a clear-cut psak, so you can paskin. Perhaps even the name of the Beis Medrash is reflective of the type of learning that took place in that specific Beis Medrash. Shem, Hashem, Shem. The type of learning that went on in the walls of the Beis Medrash of Shem was that of Batelech Lidrosh Es Hashem. Rivka wanted to know what is the deeper meaning. She wasn't going to ask a shaila, although Rabbi Dr. Fox quoted this Pasha al-Shudas in Shul. He quoted a Rishon that said that that Rivka was asking a shaila. She was asking if it's mutter to abort the pregnancy because she wasn't sure whether it was a healthy pregnancy, whether it was some type of schizophrenic fetus, and she actually posed the shaila. Can she abort and terminate the pregnancy? That was her shaila. But assuming not like that, that seems like that is the minority opinion. She wanted to understand the deeper meaning. What's the meaning? But she wants to know the omek hadvarim, the depth behind her pregnancy. When Yaakov was leaving Beersheba, he was going to Haran. There he learned, but he needed to learn. He needed to go to the Beis Medrash, as what the Gemara tells us was a necessary stopover. He wasn't punished for that. It was important and it was critical that he did so. But the type of learning wasn't just the philosophical. It wasn't just machshava. It wasn't hashkafa. It was practical. Aver, he went to the base medrash of Aver, the Miloshin Ma'avar, transition. He was transitioning from one lifestyle to the next. He was secluded in the home of Yitzchak learning. He was in the Oel Shel Torah. He was a Roed Torah. He was out in the field. He was by himself. He wasn't exposed to the real world, quote unquote. He wasn't out there. He wasn't exposed to Rishon. He had Esav, but he wasn't exposed to the way of the love, base love on living amongst love. He needed to learn practically. Halacha l'maisa, how am I able to transition and live a life tachlis when I'm in a base Rasha, when I'm amongst Lavan, I'm amongst his friends? How am I supposed to act, interact? What is the halacha? What does the Torah expect from me in a very practical way?
But how's it different to shame?
Shame was more philosophical.
No, but you just said it was practical.
No. Shame was more philosophical, more metaphysical. Hashkafa, which is also important. Rav Shechter always quotes from Rav Yashaver Soloveitchik that halacha and hashkafa aren't two different things. Halacha is how you're supposed to act, and hashkafa is how you're supposed to think. But it's all halacha. It's the same thing. But even the base medrash of Aver was more of a practical, more of a hands-on lemaisa type of learning to prepare him for the outside world. And what a tremendous bracha it is to be able to master your Deah, to be able to master sugyas aliba de hilchasa, to walk away with a maskana and something really in your pocket, like the Tzurba Rabban. You walk away with a bottom line maskana, a conclusion that you're comfortable with, that makes sense, to understand where the halacha comes from. There's no better way to live in this society, in a goyish world, in a gashmistical world. This world is a world of not of exclusive spirituality, but we're exposed to so many different things. But to know how each and every motion that we do, every time we lift our finger, we know what Hashem expects from us. We know what the halacha is. We know exactly how to act in various circumstances. That is, in the most practical sense, that is the way that we live the Torah. We live the Torah in a very practical way. I'll end with beautiful words from Rav Moshe Feinstein, beginning of this week's parsha. He asks, you don't find Kfitzas Haderech in too many places. We just had it not too long ago with Eliezer Eved Avram. All of a sudden, he begins his journey and he was there. He was at his destination. There was a Kfitzas Haderech. We can understand why Eliezer Eved Avram experienced the Kfitzas Haderech, why the journey took so short, because he was on an important mission. We find in the beginning of this week's parsha that Yaakov also had a Kfitzas Haderech. He was the Derech, the Haran, the land of Haran came to him. And Rav Moshe asks, why is that necessary? He was going on such an important mission. He was going to the base Lavan, the base of the house of the Rasha. It was so important that he needed a Kfitzas Haderech. Why do we have a Kfitzas Haderech? And Rav Moshe says it was to teach Yaakov this integral, this critical lesson. You know, Yaakov again was leaving the house of a tzaddik. He was leaving his insular, his base medrash, his own Dalet Amos of Torah, and he was going out into the world. And you could think that I'm not supposed to be here. This is not where I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to be in base medrash. This is what's going on around me is not for me. This is not a lechatchila. This is a b'diavad. I should be in base medrash now. I shouldn't be out on the street. I shouldn't be out exposed to the Rishoyim. Says Rav Moshe Feinstein, no. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to show Yaakov that this is a lechatchila. He made a kfitzas haderech to teach him that you walking Sefer Torah, Yaakov Avinu, you're able to take that kedusha, you're able to take that learning, and you're able to exist and master the Torah, master your midos, your masim tovim. You can master that in chutz la'aretz amongst Rishoyim, and that will not take away from your cheshivas one iota. On the contrary, you can be makadesh, you can sanctify that place Haran, you can make a roshem, you can make a difference, and yes, we're going to bring Haran to you. We're not going to wait until you travel to Haran. And when he realizes this, when did he realize it? He says, Moshe writes, Yaakov realized it when he saw the Hinei Sulam Utzavartz Roshem Agia Hashemayma, that there was a direct connection between him and Shemayim, between his feet, the floor of the land that his feet were on, and Shemayim. There was a clear connection. There is an amazing connection between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wherever you are. You, with your learning, with your success, with your dedication to the Torah, can make a roshem, can make a tremendous impact wherever you are. And Rav Moshe writes, a Musar for us all, but especially the members of this Chashuv Chabura. He says, and I'll read it. It's so just a few lines. It's so beautiful. V'zeh limud gadol. This is an important lesson. L'bal yisyayish ha'adam lomar. Don't say, never say, shebedor hazeh, in this generation, u'b'makom hazeh, and in this place, in this society, kasha lahasig shleimus. It's difficult to achieve shleimus, to be a complete person, a complete individual. Stop it for what? Let me be satisfied and say, what I have is sufficient. I don't need to grow anymore. Look around me. There's so much schmutz in the world. Let's be happy with what I have. Says Rav Moshe, no. Ma'at Torah u'ma'at mitzvos, that's not enough. Elagam ba'yoso pom. We're here today, Allah, on this world, lahasik kol hashleimos liyos baki b'torah v'chein b'masim tovim. We never stop growing. We never stop aspiring for more greatness. We keep on the chaburas. We keep on putting out volumes of Tzurba v'Rabbanan. Keep on growing. Keep on finishing chalakim of Shulchan Aruch. Never be satiated and content with what we've accomplished, because there's so much more, and we have the potential to do it. And it doesn't have to be in Eretz Yisrael, in the Mokum HaMikdash, wherever we are, we can take that godless and apply it here and succeed. So I wish Ernie, his wife Susie, the entire Chabura, the men, the women, and maybe I can even include myself if you don't mind, that we should all be able to succeed in conquering more areas of Torah, more of this territory of Torah. Some of this territory will be foreign territory. You're a Deah, and as these things are maybe not so familiar to many of us, but keep on going. We can succeed and take all of that godless, take all that we grow and that we achieve and apply it to our lives.
Listen, during when we did like plus follow-up and first some of the women did and some of the Syum courses. Welcome, Rabbi Publisher. We've already had a wonderful beginning of the Syum, and Achron Chaviv, we're going to hear from you as well. You sent us a bracha from Rabbi Gazi.
Yes.
And I wanted Rabbi Supplement learning Kerbiyahu with Rabbi Gazi. And I wanted to see that if you could put this on the, Mari, if you could put this so that everyone sees it as best as possible. You can just click. Yeah, this. Yeah, here you go.
שלום רב ואוהבי תורתך, לרב דוקטור אגד סיום, כל לומדי הצורבה בלוס אנג'לס, שסיימו עכשיו, ברוך השם, יורה דעה במסגרת צורבה מרבנן. אני רוצה לברך אתכם, מעומק הלב, אשריכם ואשרי חלקכם, שלקחתם זמן והשקעתם כדי ללמוד את התורה הלכה למעשה. יש לנו ברוך השם הרבה דרכים לעסוק בתורה. יש לימוד לומדס, ויש דף היומי, ויש לימוד מדרש והגדה, אבל אתם לקחתם מכל חלקי התורה, הדבר שהכי חשוב, כך אומר השח, לכל יהודי, ללמוד את הדברים הלכה למעשה. סיימתם, קיבלתם עכשיו תעודות, ואתם יכולים לעמוד לפני קודש הבריחו ולהגיד, ריבונו של עולם קיימנו מצוות בשיננת, שיהיו דברי תורה מחודדים בפיך, שאם שלך אדם, אל תגמגם ותאמר לו, אלא אמור לו מיד. אתם יודעים להגיד הלכה, לנהל את ההלכה בבית. זה ישפיע עליכם ועל כל המשפחה, על בניכם ועל בני בניכם. אני רק רוצה לברך אתכם, בזכות לימוד צורבה מרבנן, גם לרב אקשטיין, וגם לכל החבורה כולה, לא תמוש התורה מפיכם, ומפי זרעכם, ומפי זרע זרעכם עד עולם. אשריכם ואשרי חלקכם.
Beautiful. I think everyone got what he was saying. He's giving us a bracha. We should continue it, but he says that we're going to receive to Udot certificates that a person wants to say, because eventually HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to Nasat. How much Torah did you learn? Each person is going to come with the ability to answer quickly, at least maybe more than another person might who didn't go through your thing. And at least you'll have a certificate behind you that you can say, at least we went through it, we attempted it, we tried to do just as much as possible. That's a little bit what he was trying to say. Anyways, it was a very beautiful word. Do you remember him well?
I remember the Tzurba, there were these small little packets that the Chayyim used to take to the,
In the Hebrew ones.
yeah, they were this big, you put them in your pocket, and that was it, and people would walk around the yeshiva with little, look like the little benches that you get at a chasana. That's what they look like, and then from there grew this unbelievable organization, this unbelievable leader. Shreichem Yisrael.
Anyways, in order to introduce Rabbi Publisher properly, first of all, I want to introduce Rabbi Ari Rakov. Ari Rakov has been for the last 2 years the executive director and executive vice president of Religious Zionist America. He works in New York. He's from the Five Towns, West Hempstead, right? My Arabs are from there. And
Around the corner from what I saw from in-laws.
Every Davis. My in-laws.
So Rabbi Rakov now, as COVID is lightened up, is starting to travel across the United States. And really, Mizrahi reviving. They were in Cleveland, they were in Boston, they were in all sorts of different places. Where I want Rabbi Rakov in his introduction, Rabbi Polishek, to describe a little bit what's going on in Mizrahi as it relates to Tzurba, and then of course we'll hear from Rabbi Polishek. Many of the people in our Chabura have met Rabbi Polishek. When we first started, he came and he gave us a shiur, or he attended one of our shiur in the first couple of months after we first came. He's also from South Africa, so he might know Yeshiva College. These are the Monderers. They, by the way, a lot of the LA Chabura group have sponsored 3 or 4 of the volumes in the Tzurba. That means Los Angeles community has been very helpful and responsible in some ways in the growth of Tzurba. And I'm sure they're very pleased with our Chabura as well. Anyways, Rabbi Rakov, please.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to our Publisher. Just in time. These are the certificates. Is that the say that you want to follow? So I'll introduce you. I'm going to introduce your Publisher.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm humbled to be here. This is my first time actually meeting all of you, but Ernie and Susie, thank you for having us. Thank you for inspiring this. I feel a little bit humbled to speak about Tzurba in the presence of those who completed all of your Deah. I just started Orach Chaim. I saw the full set and I said, you know what? Let's start with volume 8. We're up to Hilchos Tzitzis also. I understand that you're in the same place. But no, genuinely, it's something that I was not familiar with. But it's something that I think reflects, everything that Mizrahi, which is an acronym, people don't realize Mizrahi is Merkaz Ruchani. That's what it always stood for. Meir Bar Ilan coined that term, and that has been the term that really underlies what Mizrahi is all about. It's about Merkaz Ruchani, a center of spirituality wherever Jews live. Our ancestors yearned to live in Israel. They dreamed of living in Israel, but most do not have that privilege. So that was it kept us rooted in terms of that. Now, I think COVID has thrown a little bit of a curveball into that. Now, just to get in the shore for those who've been able to get in, we took a group in the summer, and I know Ernie, you had also been calling me for advice. People thought I was Dr. Fauci. And thank God now it looks like the skies are open. But was that? Yeah, correct. But humbled to be here, to witness this. I think it's an incredible. First of all, it's incredible material. And I really want to give the cover to Jerome Polishek, who really has spearheaded this. The whole team at Eretz Femda. It's actually remarkable. It's very rare that you have something that literally we've been going through schools. Maybe I'll share that just as a point of introduction. We've been going through schools throughout the East Coast. Jerome was just in Cleveland. We have staff down in Florida. There are over 100 chaburas going on in the country. I'm positive that this one is the longest standing chabura. I don't know others that have finished. Actually, we met one chabura that did finish. We're learning as we go. There's some silent chaburas going on that we're learning, but which is incredible by itself. And I truly believe that there's a movement here, just like in Israel, just like where Ghazi has launched there. That's imminent and will be explosive. And what's most interesting is that all the yeshivot will be in Shalhevet, Eula, will be around the community tomorrow. Here, just as we were on the East Coast, they don't have a halacha curriculum. It's really interesting. They don't have a halacha curriculum. They learn halacha, of course. Doesn't mean they're not learning halacha. Interestingly, to the Ra's point earlier, the women, the seminaries have a much more orderly approach to halacha learning, and so, but we have through some new developments, we're going to need to speak to this as well. But we'll be able to actually produce for yeshivot and men and women. We'll be able to actually produce volumes, not in the full. We'll be able to basically select the areas of halacha that they're learning already. So let's say we were in the Maimonides school in Boston, where that's where I studied. And he has a very specific methodology of halacha learning, from Deah Tefillah to Shabbos to various. It's a very structured program. So they'll be able to select out of the Tzurba the first 10 volumes. We'll have 15 more coming out. Maybe you'll speak to that as well in terms of the coming attractions. But it's incredible. Each place was astounded, blown away, and most didn't even know about it. We were in Ramaz. They were teaching Tzurba in Hebrew. They didn't know they had it in English. So that's on us. So that we'll have to advertise. So it's a good problem to have, as we would say. But I just wanted to say that I think from my perspective, Tzurba represents really the essence of the Mizrahi, of the Merkaz Ruchani. I think tonight's event is, I'm really stunned. I'm blown away. I'm not surprised because Ernie and I just met for the first time, but I've been on Zoom with him almost on a daily and certainly weekly basis, so we would have recognized each other. Yaakov, his son, used to work together with me at YU, where I worked for many years. So Rabbi Einhorn and I went to yeshiva together. It's a small world, as they say. But thank you for having me here. And I'd just like to introduce Doron Podlashek. I don't know if you've been here before. You're new to the community. You're a new face. Since he's modest, I'll have to introduce him properly, and you can add on whatever you wish. You won't say this otherwise. Everything that's here is under Doron's leadership. Rav Agazi, of course, he will say, no, it's not true. It's true. There's a team that translates. They produce a new sefer every 3 months. Just to process that at this high level, I don't think I've ever seen something like that. Every 3 months, a new shipment comes. It comes right into our we have a warehouse in upstate New York. That's where they ship. The volumes have been coming in so much, especially volume 10 now. It's we had to actually divert the shipments to our office in New York, in Woodmere, where we have a temporary facility, because it couldn't even keep up with the distribution. And that's even without a full advertising campaign. And that's without even extending the reach to all these yeshivot. So call it the vote to you and for all the efforts. And please extend that to all the other writers and editors where it's sped up, because it's, again, I'm not familiar with any other enterprise that produces such a high quality every 3 months to be able to produce a new sefer. So call it for that. Mazel tov to everyone on this incredible accomplishment. I'm truly privileged to be here, and thank you for having me. And I'll introduce you to Ron.
Thank you, Bavari, to Rabbi Dr. Egerstein and the whole Chabura. Firstly, I apologize for coming late. Left for them to Rabbanim that I must go Divrei Torah. Got stuck in Minneapolis. But Baruch Hashem, it's really a zchut to be here. And I think one of the most exciting things for me over the last week, Bavari touched upon it, but I think there's a possibility of, there's a real challenge that the younger generation, I think all of us, on a certain level, how do we connect to our Yahadut? How do we connect to living a life as HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it? And obviously, halacha is so critical for us to be able to live a life of Yahadut, of connected, of living with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I see that here's an opportunity, because around the table you have parents, maybe some of your grandparents, that are learning halacha.
So good to me.
And we've been throughout, New Jersey and New York and but all of these places, and the kids that we've been speaking to principals and teachers. What are they teaching? How do you teach halacha? How do you engage the youth in halacha in a way that excites them? And when they've seen the books and the colored and it's just laid out in a certain way, the teachers are getting excited. But what's exciting me is because if the kids are learning it and the parents are learning in the chabura and the grandparents are learning in the chabura, and then you have cross-generational Talmud Torah, then it becomes alive. Then it becomes something that the Zaidi can be learning. What are you learning? Well, I'm learning the same. We can do it together, and that's something amazing. So that's something Bezrat Hashem that we'll get to the chaburas in the shuls and the kids learning it in the schools, and the parent and the kid meet together and they learn. Because I'll tell you, as a parent, it's very difficult to kind of engage with kids today. You're fighting a lot of wars. You've got constant media, etc., and it's a big challenge. So hopefully, Bezrat Hashem, maybe this is something that will be something revolutionary that we can all gain for, not only us but also for our children and grandchildren. Just end off with a very, very brief Dvar Torah. I'm sure you've heard many Divrei Torah, but the Beis Halevi, in the Hakdama of his Shailot Tzurba, he points out that there are two specific mitzvot when you learn a book like Tzurba. Obviously, you're learning Talmud Torah. That's a given. You mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. But he explains the Beis Halevi that when you learn halacha, there's another element, and it's a hechsher mitzvah, because you cannot. The Mishnah Berurah writes, no one can keep Shabbos if you don't learn Hilchot Shabbos. It's just impossible. You'll just left and right. You just go to the dinner table, you'll probably be over 10 melachot. So in order to fulfill the mitzvot, you have to learn how to do it. And that's what he calls a hechsher mitzvah. So when you learn Torah, you learn Parashah, you learn Gemara, that's great. You're learning mitzvah of Kiyum Talmud Torah. But when you learn halacha, you not only have the benefit of Talmud Torah, but you have the hechsher mitzvah of being able to know how to live like a Jew. And that's a different level. And because of that, we won't go into it, that's another discussion, but that's perhaps why the bracha of Birkat Torah is so unique. There are three actual brachot because it encapsulates three different elements, and I won't go into it, but it really is a special bracha because when you learn, it's so much more than just Talmud Torah. It encapsulates how we can live and connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So thank you again, Dr. Rabbi Egerstein. Thank you to all of you. It's an amazing.
And maybe you'll give out the certificate.
I think the Maggid share.
No.
Sure. Okay, so I hope that we all the.
I'd just like to give you some positive feedback.
Yes.
Starting with volume 8,
Yeah.
we started to do diagrammatic flow and development of halacha.
Yes.
We all thought that was a wonderful addition.
Yes. We are trying to up our game all the time. And if Dr. Mondra mentioned that, I have to say that it's a big schut for me because my parents were not from. The only reason I'm from today is because I went to Yeshiva College. And Yeshiva College was started by the Brana family. So, call them out. Okay, so to Dov Ben Yechezkel, the Mishpachat Mondra.
Okay.
Look this way. Hey guys, Ernie, get in there closer. There you go. Perfect. And to Zvi Ben Yitzchak HaKohen, the Mishpachat Katz. Oh, I'm going to take all of them.
Yeah, you'll take these.
Ari, please come in.
Okay, guys.
Harold.
Oh, really?
Harold.
Oh, thank you, Ernie. Thank you.
And to Chaim Yisrael ben Asher Zelig HaKohen and Mishpachat Eisenberg. Better get this one right, huh?
Yeah, no, you're sorry.
I'm gonna get in? Okay. Got it. To Meir ben Eliezer, Mishpachat Horowitz.
Also our technical man.
Okay. Perfect.
First of all, everyone, Mario, he's really the man behind the scenes.
Right.
You have no idea. Every day. The Dafyon, the Novishir, the Tzurba Rabbanan, and keeping track. And it's just really what you do, Mario. Besides the learning that you're doing, you're really keeping everything
Yes,
together.
I think it's like killer. We had to stand on the roof. It's really good.
And to Rabbi Elimelech Yechezkel ben Yaakov leMishpachat Egel. Oh,
Fantastic.
we're missing something. We're missing you. You're supposed to be in two places. Rabbi Yaakov Meir ben Yisrael Mordechai HaKohen.
Yellen. You need to sign these.
Yes.
I will.
That's my fault. I was meant to get you earlier.
I'll go this way. The marketeer, I need to have a signature. Yeah.
You know what we should do? When we finish, we should leave them all here, or you can sign them all, then we'll pick them up Tuesday night. Yeah, who's, otherwise it's gonna be running all over town. Oops, wait a minute, what happened here? Ernie,
How did I end up with this job?
I don't know. This is your husband.
Yeah, really.
Okay, wait a minute, what happened here? Hold on. Okay, no, I'm losing it. Hold it.
You have to sign it.
Okay, look up, guys.
Okay.
Ernie, we're all gonna leave the certificates with you. You can sign them all. Then we'll get. Oh, it's not finished yet. Abraham Yitzhak, Rabbi Zelig Eliyahu, the Mishpachat Anhor.
He just left.
Gerard.
Oh, Gerard. Yeah.
Yeah, of course I'm gonna wait for it.
No, thank you.
We want to do it only. American boys want to do it.
Okay. Okay, discussion's over. Picture time. Picture time.
Get out of your way.
Got it.
This is fine room.
Ernie, should we leave it here?
So I'm gonna keep each one of you keep on. I'm gonna sign it for you.
Well, one second.
Okay.
One more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
How long do you?
Moshe ben Mordechai.
Moshe ben Mordechai Mishpachat Summer.
Summer.
Hurry up because my arms are tired.
Tell him to get up off this chair. Mario, help her. She's getting tired. See, I took care of it for you.
Yeah.
By the way, one of our group made Aliyah. Yona ben Eliezer Mishpachat Zaru.
Yeah.
Right? And then we have Zev ben Mishpachat Feinblum. And Eliezer Rebbe Yom Chaim Mishpachat Genauer. I brought him the PDF, but I'll bring him the thing. He's sitting Shiva, so he couldn't.
Okay. Summer,
Michael?
in there.
Mover un poco para la izquierda
Okay,
porque
guys,
así no
the
entra el
camera.
otro.
Summer, the camera's here.
Ahora ahí.
Got it.
Okay.
Ernie, what happened to Nasi Baram?
Mario sí es el más lindo de todos.
And Saul ben Moshe Akbain, the Mishpachat Bernstein. Ah, Cohen. I'll go around, I'll go around.
Yes.
No, I can get through here.
You can.
Yeah. We can get a good
Oh,
cover, right?
Bernstein.
Yes, it's a good idea. Everybody with their certificate.
She's been trans, okay, I'll see. Okay, no worries.
Salia Shikoya.
About for you.
Could everybody hold their certificate so we can take a joint picture?
Como ahorrador. It look like like a convict. Bernie, you're on. Okay, finish with you. Harold, okay. Michael,
Where should we stand? Stand there?
Yeah, stand up.
ahí en el Dabuti Show.
Doing the whole group.
Wait till everybody's there.
I'm coming right back.
Mario, you are the most handsome one. Unless you go para allá también.
Here's Ernie's phone. You can take the picture this way, okay?
Can you get us all in?
She's taking it. Right. Who's taking first? Wait a minute. Gabrielle, up front.
Can you get us all?
Yeah, I have you all. Ready? I got everybody.
Like a
1,
celebrity.
2, 3.
That's good place. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Okay.
Susie, you on my camera? Susie, who's on my camera?
Is there a photo man close by?
Polaroid.
Let's go. Who's got my camera?
Jerry.
Let's see if we can
Trey.
get it over there.
One more. What?
Everybody smile.
Guys, you do a good job, Anna.
Mario, you have to get in. Mario.
Bernie's too big.
Mario, get in there. Mario, stand next to you.
We'll get Josie.
Pero más.
It's a mess.
Lower your thing.
All the flashes.
I don't know.
Official, it's official.
Okay, give me your certificate and I will sign it.
He's gonna charge now.
That was where we get.
I don't know.
Yeah, I have a pen.